and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
For the WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
For the World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. This is the, other bookend edition of the Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. I am your host, Mr. Green, and I am speaking of the previous edition that was episode 131. I'm doing these things back to back, so if you stay tuned to that, you realize that the editing sequence here was just one after the other, even though it's not released that way. So it's time to move on into the next big review, and that's going to be another WoW episode that happened about as of this recording about a week and a half ago. But before we do that, and I'm only skipping the news, views, and updates because I'm trying to keep this train on track, because I know I'm going to have a big one coming up in the next edition when everything gets back caught up to speed. But before I do move forward, I just need to point out one thing. This would have normally been in the news, views, and updates, but like I said, we're skipping that. That Diva Dirt has begun their list for their top 30 women wrestlers under 30. And as of right now, what are they up to? 29. I am going to be really, really interested in seeing where exactly, if any WoW competitor appears on this list, and the caveat to that, as a WoW girl. It is not going to count if they're on that list and they're listed as Hollywood Haley J, opposed to HollySwag. I just want to know how many people that exist on the WoW, and specifically WoW alone, are going to be there on that list, if any. I honestly don't think that any of them are going to show up, which is, not a knock on anybody's particular talents. It's more like a knock against the promotion of WoW. And honestly, there's a lot of times, and the more that I report on it and review it, that I take the term promotion very, very lightly when I apply it to WoW. I mean, it's very difficult to look at them as a promotion, considering like the taping schedule. I've told a couple of people a number of times, like everything that we're watching right now, save for maybe an upcoming episode or so, was shot within a month. So it's not like they have some ongoing things that's happening with them, and WoW overall is just, all right, guys, we shot this thing. We'll see you next year. That's essentially it for the most part. And for the life of me, I cannot understand for the few people that went out of their way at one point in time, like, I'm not going to wrestle for anybody else but WoW anymore. It was like, for those, I really don't understand why on earth they decided like that was a decision to make. But, teach their own. Again, let's just go ahead and repeat it. This is the Rights and Wrongs Pro Wrestling podcast you're listening to right now, and this is your host, Mr. Green. Before I go running off on a tangent, let's just go ahead and do what we came to do. It is time to get into the full-on review. We're going to skip the news, views, and updates this week. We'll save that for the next episode, and let us go into what was this clash of mother and child. But we'll get to that. So let me give YouTube, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, let me give them their obligatory slot to place their ad. And when that's done, then we go right into the review. All right. And here we go. So, this is going to be the review for episode 328. Season 3, episode 28 of WoW. The title, What You Gonna Do About It, Mama? The air date, March 22nd, and the chronological number, 132. The episode starts off with Miami Sweet Heat coming to the ring without Lana Star, and they seem, relatively happy for all intents and purposes. Despite the fact that this has been their ongoing story, like, why are you not paying attention to us, Lana, or whatever the case may be, they seem perfectly fine. McLean tries to explain why Lana isn't there. My question I wrote down while they were coming out is like, why can't she manage both? This was never explained. I understand the story that they're doing, but there hasn't been a real genuine reason as to why she cannot manage both. It's not like we haven't seen her on the show before, coming out for one person, then coming out later for the next. So again, the question that I had is, why can she not manage both? I get the storyline. I get the, I get where they're trying to go with. I understand the payoff, but why? It's never been addressed. This probably would have been an easier thing for me, and I believe I brought it up before, in that imagine if Miami Sweet Heat, her golden ticket, has gone on a losing streak of some sort, to the point that it caused her to have a falling out with him. Like, there was no falling out. There was nothing that Miami Sweet Heat actually did wrong. And in typical WoW fashion, it feels like the angle is kind of jumped ahead. Now, when I say that it jumped ahead, I say it for this reason. What we had is Miami Sweet Heat lose the first time that they didn't have Lana in their corner. And they made a big deal about it. Like, I don't know what's happening. Without Lana in our corner, I just can't concentrate. And then, pretty much the next time we see them, they're back to just the way they were. It wasn't like they lost anything long term. They just lost that day, and then that was it, and just kind of moved on. So it's hard to look at them in the vein of, here's this team that lost a step, or their manager no longer believes in them, or those things. It's hard to see where that's going. And then even if they did, that would be like an act of sympathy to try to build the audience up to care about Miami Sweet Heat. It doesn't seem like they wanted to do any of that. It doesn't seem like they wanted the audience to care about Miami Sweet Heat, because they hadn't really changed. They hadn't really explained why the falling out with Sweet Heat and Lana Star. They haven't explained why Lana Star is incapable of managing both teams within her unit. It just is what it is. So those were notes that I put down, and I was a little disappointed that a storyline that had promised would have a hole like this to some degree. And it is a hole. Now, is it a big enough hole where people are going to care about it? Maybe not. WoW's fans overall probably will not care. Somebody outside of the orbit of WoW might. But, I mean, is it that big of a deal? That's debatable. So, in any case, we'll go to the match in and of itself. I know I got sidetracked, but I felt like I needed to do a little update on what I thought about the angle, the participants, why they're doing this, why it makes sense, why it does not. And speaking of things that do not make sense, here we have Miami Sweet Heat squaring off against Animal Instinct. Animal Instinct, who is another heel team And if you listen to me do this for any number of times, you would probably get the idea that Animal Instinct is not my favorite team that's on the roster, nor are they my particular cup of tea in terms of personality and persona that they present. Do they have some sort of potential to grow into being wrestlers? Sure. But outside of that, I have a problem with it. And that problem begins with them coming out the ringside and me seeing that stupid goddamn video that they come out with. It is every bit the reason that I say is it gets hard to take this show seriously and some of the people that's in it. So yeah, Miami Sweet Heat, they're in the ring. They're pretty much waiting for them. Then the show introduces Animal Instinct. Katie Marie Jones does her normal shtick and fall contest ready for one fall and hold the mic up like she normally does. But then she introduces Animal Instinct and we see the human anthropomorphic cat and her idiot dog trainer friend Goldie Collins, and they're just hamming it up in front of the camera that's recorded their intro video. And hamming it up is about as accurate a term as I can apply. And this is every reason that I said that I have a problem. Like, why do they have to be doing this in front of the camera so much? It becomes so hard, so difficult to just take them as a serious threat or act when the things that you see about them is them looking like they're just playing around and goofing off in a studio. They're making faces at the camera and things like that. You can see exactly what I'm talking about. Just go to the video and just look at the intro of them pointing at the camera, pouting, just doing just ridiculous stuff. Who's going to take that seriously? So anyhow, that aside, let's just get aside from the opening video. Because they have no control over where they get slotted in the show, I'm sure. So I'm not going to blame them personally for that. We start this off with McLean carrying on about loving the sound of the whip. Week by week, I think that he begins to unveil his personal kinks to the world. One week he's talking about spitting every chance that he got. Now he's talking about the whip, and that's not the first time he's like, I love that whip, Nigel. Hey, look, ain't no kink shaming for me. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I just prefer to keep the things that send me at the wall like that to myself. But anyway, this match is a heel versus a heel match. I don't know why this is taking place, because it would make absolute sense to me if we were trying on this slow burn to turn the Miami Sweet Heat babyface. But I'm not entirely sure that that's what they're trying to do. It became at least evident when we had one of our first or more recent heel versus heel matches when Jessie Jones took on Penelope Pink. That started off as a heel versus heel affair. Then it just evolved into Jessie being the anti-hero and the sympathetic babyface in that equation. And then it just made her a full-on babyface, like I said, as an anti-hero. Here, I don't know where we're getting with Miami Sweet. So, it's hard for me to just wholeheartedly be like, well, this is stupid. They didn't need to have this match, because it would make absolute sense to me if this was the first domino in them going babyface. I just don't know if they're going to go babyface. And there are times when it's hard to see who's supposed to be the de facto babyface within the course of this match. At some point, Animal Instinct became that, just on the basis of how they were working in the ring. So we're not going to get on anybody's in-ring work. And Miami Sweet Heat largely played the role of the heel, although there were, they might have had a point or two where they were positioned babyface. And we're talking about just in the course of the match. But the match in and of itself started off with Lindsay and Katarina Jinx. I mean, it was fine. The only real thing that took place there that I did not like was in the opening stages of that match, Katarina goes for like a heel hook kick, which didn't come anywhere near Lindsay's face. It's one of those moments that, all right, I can appreciate the effort, and I do understand that is not an easy thing for her to pull off. But if you can't pull that off, then you probably don't need to do it, because it cannot be stated enough that when WoW has something go wrong, it is applied to everybody in WoW, not just the competitor that's in that match. So when she does that, it's just, man, WoW can't do such and such. But anyway, so she tries this heel hook kick, and then she clips out the legs from Lindsay, and then she gives her a hooking leg lariat while she's seated. That's the best way I could describe it, I guess. And Animal Instinct starts off in control, or at least Katarina Jinx of Animal Instinct starts off in control. Lindsay is having a hard time, and Collins comes in, and she keeps the heat on. Now, I feel like I should say about Animal Instinct the same thing that I said about Classmaster. There are points in time where they do show promise, and when they're in the middle of the match, where they start to straighten out and stop acting so silly and goofy and act like they're actually trying to get something done. And this is one of those cases where you got little glimpses of that within the course of the match. And here's one of the things I said, I brought up before. There came a point in the match where Miami Sweet Heat kind of got positioned as the de facto babyface based on what was happening in the ring. And that first moment of that was Lindsay is getting pinned by Collins. Lori comes in to break up the pin. She does, but it also creates an issue where Collins and Lori are giving words to each other while the referee's like, hey, guys, you need to settle down, stop that, get out of the ring, Lori, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Lindsay has crawled over for whatever reasons to the other side towards her opponent, and Katarina Jinx has hooked Lindsay up across the ropes in some leg-applied choke, which doesn't really look good, but, we'll take it for what it is. Then Collins comes in. This is after Lori gets put out, and drapes herself across the body of Lindsay. And she's just kind of bouncing up and down on her. More humiliating than anything. Now, this is the first thing that I didn't like. Lori comes in, and she, rather than go directly towards trying to pull Collins off, she walks over and walks towards the ref and starts an argument with him. Like, that one moment made me feel like, okay, I don't know if I agree with that train of thought. What I feel like should have happened, Lindsay's on the rope, Collins is on top of her. Lori should have came in, directly aimed at Collins, and forced the referee to back her off. Because as it is right now, it's like, why would you go to the ref? Yes, he's over there, but she was literally 2 feet behind her sister to be able to save her. That much. She could have reached out and punched Collins in the back of the head and got her off if she really wanted to do it. But instead, she went over there and marched like, hey, what are you going to do about it? And then she starts to argue with the referee. It would have made much more sense to me if she had tried to go over there and save her sister and the ref prevented her from doing it. Let her get in a couple of shots in the back of Collins, and Collins cover up, referee backs her off. Hey, you can't be in here. Get out of here. But anyhow, that little exchange takes place. of course, the tag goes on while the ref is getting Laurie out of the ring. Jinx comes in to get a double suplex on Lindsay. They go for a cover. Laurie saves her sister again. And this is where Lindsay is able to turn it around. She's able to break free of the grip of Jinx. And then pretty much performs her variation of Oklahoma Stampede. Now, she doesn't have any speed attached to it. She's more or less just kind of walking across the ring. I mean, it's still a fair bit of strength. Now, it's not like she's slowly moving at a granular pace, but she's not moving as fast as the originator of the maneuver, Dr. Death Steve Williams, if we're going that. But she does add in a third corner opposed to just running from one to the other and then the power slam. Her variation of it is over the shoulder, one turnbuckle, second turnbuckle, third turnbuckle tag. I would like to suggest that she add in the power slam that Doc used to do. It was hoist up, carry, run to the turnbuckle, turn around, run to the opposite side turnbuckle, turn around, run to the middle of the mats. I was about to say screen, but not the screen. Run to the middle of the ring and power slam. And that's one version of an Oklahoma Stampede. Not that Lindsay's was bad. I just, a little add-on couldn't hurt. So anyhow, this is carrying on, and as this match is taking place, an interesting comment took place by the commentators. One of those comments was, WOW is famous for the tag team division. And I right then, I was like, I have to write this down. I got to make sure that I write that down so I can remember this so I can talk about it. WOW is famous for the tag team division. My first answer to that was since when and with who? When has WOW ever been famous for that tag team division? I mean, please, and that is not a rhetorical question. I mean that seriously. Anybody, fan, management, roster, whoever. When has WOW ever been famous for their tag team division? Now, that's not to say that there aren't good tag teams in it. Now, that's a different thing, and I'm not going to say that there aren't good tag teams in there. That would be unfair. But to claim that WOW is famous for the tag team, first off, WOW isn't famous for anything. WOW is famous for being WOW, if you're going to go with that. But they're not famous for any given component of their wrestling program. I do not know if I've ever heard a single person across the 20-something plus years that WOW has existed on and off mention to me once they got a great tag team division. If I can paraphrase Scott Steiner berating the Dudleys, you got a lot of teams, but there's nobody on the roster. More or less. No one is going to include Spring Break 24/7 as some magnificent team. No one's going to look at top tier and be like, yeah, that's one of the greatest teams that's ever existed. I like the Mighty Mites, but they're not going to be thrown into that. There's several of them there, like I said, that are extremely talented. The Brat Pack, they're talented, but they're not going to be listed as one of the great teams of all time. Who is out there saying that WOW has some sort of great tag team division or that this show should be famous for it? I mean, just look at the teams that we got in the ring. Okay, now Miami Sweet Heat, maybe. Animal Instinct, no. At what point is Animal Instinct ever going to show up on anybody's list of great tag teams? You can't be famous for a tag team division if you don't have tag teams within it that are considered great. And I'm sorry, most of them are not. At least Miami Sweet Heat did get some accolade outside of WoW at some point in time. But I think at this point, in order for them to solidify whatever legacies that they may want, they would probably need to leave. Because as successful as they are in WoW, I don't think that being in the WoW Championship in the long run is going to do anything for them. I mean, it's a hard enough thing for every other wrestling promotion to get notice or praise or some level of recognition for their women's tag team wrestlers. What makes WoW any different? TNA has a hard time doing it. I mean, Spitfire was a good team, but it's not like they existed at some sort of grand plateau that everybody looked up to as far as women's tag team wrestling was concerned. The King Bees were good as NWA tag team champions, but they weren't seen by the vast majority of people because of the NWA. WWE has struggled with their women's tag team division for years. WoW isn't exempt from that. And they aren't exempt from it based on that at least half of that roster of people who probably had no desire to be in the wrestling business in the first place. And say what you will, whether that's fair or not, it's wrestling fans and wrestling publications and wrestling websites, easy for me to say, wrestling websites and things like that are gauging this by and large. And they don't appeal to them at all. So who is saying this? Who is looking at this and saying they're famous for tag team wrestling? All those great classic tag team wrestling matches that WoW's had that put them on the map. All those phenomenal tag teams that are going to go down in legendary status. Who is saying this? Nobody. That's who. Nobody. Nobody says that. I just had to sidebar do that for a second. Anyhow, so let's just call this match what it was. The match was a foregone conclusion. I don't think anybody that was watching this that had looked at WoW at any given amount of time looked at it expecting Animal Instinct to do anything other than walk into this thing and lose. And that's pretty much what they did. And they didn't just lose, they lost clean. So whatever debate that might have existed, whereas Animal Instinct should be some sort of tag team champions or something like that, or that they're in a better position than Miami Sweet Heat, that those answers were delivered by the end of this match. They are not, and they will not get over at Miami Sweet Heat. The Heat perform a tandem maneuver, which the leapfrog into the guts move. I mean, I'm fine with that. I just prefer it the other way around, is the leapfrog over to the back, because it's easier for fans to accept that, the back's not supposed to bend that way. Now, that's not to say that leaping on somebody's abdomen isn't going to hurt, but I'm just, for visual purposes, I mean. So, getting back to the match. Remember earlier when I said it's a heel versus heel match, and, they both had their moments where they kind of became the de facto baby faces within this. Well, at this point, Animal Instinct essentially turned into the baby faces of the match, even though earlier they were cheating on Miami Sweet Heat, and Miami Sweet Heat were the de facto baby faces. Then it turns around. So now we got Sweet Heat. They're jumping and beating up on Katarina Jinx. They go for another tandem move in the corner. Jinx is able to get out and make the hot tag to her partner, Goldie Collins. And before she gets out, she gives another hooking heel kick to the mouth of Lindsay. So the tag is made. Collins comes off, and she does this double clothesline on both of the twins, and the old babyface hype up thing, even though she's not a babyface, but she's working like a babyface right here. She's fired up, showing a lot of energy. She's giving clotheslines, taking Lori to task. Liz was already, pretty much dropped and put out. Collins also hit a, spine buster. Lindsay was able to stop it from being the final count. Then she just basically runs over there, pops Katarina Jinx in the mouth while she's standing on the apron, I guess, watching the stars because she didn't see her coming. And then they prepare Collins for the Fab Jab. Hoist her up, turn her around in the backbreaker position, the sidewalk slam position. Laura comes down with the elbow. Boom, 1, 2, 3, clean as a sheet. Miami Sweet Heat defeat Animal Instinct. And again, I'm not sure what's this going to do or where this is going to go. It's one of those moments that one of the few times I have to say we have to wait and see where this is and see whether this was a good decision or a bad decision. My gut tells me that it was a bad one, but I don't know that. I want to believe that this is the beginning of Sweet Heat's babyface turn. But I also feel like wow is wow, and they probably will not do that. The promo after the match makes me feel that Miami Sweet Heat are still heels. So whatever took place, whatever moment it happened, the brief snapshot of time that they were in the sympathetic role within the course of the match did not translate here at the end. Where they're basically saying, hey, we want a title shot. And in so many words, whether Lana's involved with it or not. So there's still the effort of them going after the championships. It doesn't seem like it's any longer about them trying to prove that they should have Lana's favor opposed to Penelope Pink and HollySwag. Very rarely have I said, well, you got to stay tuned. But, yeah, this is one of those cases where we got to stay tuned. We have to watch and see whether they will do something with it. Because we know that WoW has had at least 2 occasions, 2 of which I posted, by the way, but at least 2 occasions where there's been footage that has aired on their programming seemingly ahead of schedule. One of those is showing Tormenta and Princess Aussie as having the tag team championships. The other is the one that's more relevant to Miami Sweet Heat, Penelope Pink and HollySwag also wearing the tag team championships. But within that video, Miami Sweet Heat is there also. So it gives you somewhat the impression like, all right, well, it's still one big faction. Maybe not necessarily a happy family, but there's still one big faction. Are any of these futures en route? We don't know. Time will tell. The match in and of itself is fine. I just don't know what we were trying to get with this. Beyond the fact that, somebody just decided, well, we should have a heel versus heel match. Whatever value Animal Instinct had for them, I'm not feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. Sorry. I know they gave them this tiny run against the tag team champions, but I just am not feeling. They haven't grown into that. To me, they're just 2 people that got put together and thrown into a title shot because why not? That's how they come off to me. Next segment is a promo for the Alliance for Spring Break 24/7. Yeah. The Spring Breakers. So, another case of foregone conclusion. Spring Break 24/7 and the Alliance. We shall begin with the Alliance coming out to ringside. They come out first, and then Gambino does the same damn thing she does every time she comes out to ringside. This is at a point where it's insane. She doesn't ever manage her team. Ever. She'll walk out there and then immediately walk over there to the commentator booth. All right, guess who's coming to sit with me? Nigel, this is Adriana Gambino. What clause in her contract forces her to have to go sit at that goddamn commentating booth every time they come out the ringside? Yes, she's a good talker. Yes, I enjoy hearing her speak. But enough is enough of that. Not once do I remember her ever being at ringside to watch her girls. And yeah, okay, and I get it. Spring Break 24/7, which by all intents and purposes, even in WoW's universe, is a job team. Let's just call it for what they are. They ain't winning nothing. They might grip one every once in a while, but they're a job team. So you can make an argument like, well, she didn't need to be there, but she's never there. She is never there. She always goes to the commentating booth. What kind of manager is she? I mean, you could at least stand at ringside for a little while and look interested. The one thing that the Alliance has going for them at any given point is that they look like they enjoy each other's company and they're having fun. Now, that's one thing that I can say for the group. And that's probably more reliant on Del Rey and Rhythm than anything. Just look at their faces when they come out there. I mean, they look genuinely happy. And like they just finished telling each other a bunch of jokes or something, you know? But as a group, man, and it's hard for me to say it because I like them, but the Alliance serves no purpose. They're just there. And it's worse that Gambino doesn't even bother to be at ringside for her team. Beyond the fact that she just, when they're in trouble, she stands up at the commentating booth yelling. But that's about it. So anyway, I mean, I wrote down on my notes, she might as well not even be there. And I had, why is this happening? She may as well not even be there because of that. It happens too frequently. It's not like this takes place every once in a while, or she does this only when it's a team that I know they're going to beat. She does it all the time. And it's just disappointing. So, the other team. Spring Break 24/7. Sandy Shore, Crystal Waters, Brittany Bay. Now, I asked somebody a while ago, what exactly is it that makes them Spring Break 24/7? What is that supposed to mean? And not one person could respond or answer to that. They seem like such a generic team from the annals of WoW that is just nerve-wracking and just annoying, if nothing else. Like, all they are for me is WoW's evolution of what was that? Their Baywatch ripoff team that they had. I can't remember. It wasn't Spring Break, but they had some name. I mean, it was clearly Baywatch inspired, and it just kept breaking out. Every incarnation that WoW has had some surfer girl. Somebody that does nothing but apparently hang out there at the beach, and when they got some downtime, they'll come in the ring and wrestle. And but that's about it. Every last one, every incarnation, all of them have had some variation of that. And I wish I could remember the name. But like I said, if you needed to know what it was, it's basically just, it began as a Baywatch ripoff. And then it just kind of transitioned from there. Like, I don't know why, but it seems like it's just one of his favorite gimmicks to throw out. And speaking of them and their gimmicks, apparently Brittany Bay didn't get the memo when they were supposed to take their, and I don't mean this in a salacious way, she didn't get the memo when they were going to take the pants off and they were coming down the ringside. And I'm talking about those little netted pants that sit on over top of their tights. You perverts. Anyway, but no, it didn't look like she got the memo because when they were coming out to ringside, Waters and Shore take theirs off. Babe, for whatever reasons, walking out to the ring and she still has hers on. So somebody didn't get told when we were going to do this, or they weren't paying attention when they did it. So now we've got this team. And I need to point out that I had gotten on Spring Break 24/7 for all three of the ladies cowering in the corner when they saw Reina Del Rey. I was like, y'all are babyface. What are you cowering for? And in fairness to this situation, it was pointed out to me, and we'll address this person as the Queen Bee. But the Queen Bee pointed out to me, like, well, you got to remember that Del Rey had pretty much beaten up the original members of Spring Break 24/7 on her own already. And I had forgotten about that. I was like, all right, well, you know what? That right there would make some sense. But they also pointed out the fact that, it probably would have been better if Bay, being new to the team, had not backed out and, didn't realize why they were scared. Now, I'm paraphrasing here, but, that would mean something, or at least it'd be a good starting point. And I can see that, especially when two of them kind of got smacked around and beaten up by Del Rey, but the other was like, hey, guys, what's wrong? That would have been interesting, if not funny, if nothing else. But as it was, what we started off with was Del Rey getting into the ring, all three of them looking at her like, oh, no, we don't want any part of that. So they get out. And they stay out. Which does beg the question, though. It's like, well, did y'all not see who you were wrestling against when you saw your names on the board in the back? Did it not occur to you that you were going to be in the ring against Del Rey? Apparently not. But Del Rey does the nice thing for them, like, all right, I'll get out. She tags off, and Gianni gets into the ring. The workhorse of the Alliance, Gigi Gianni. So she gets in, and, we have our match, and I'm not going to go through the whole blow-by-blow of everything that took place in there, because I don't find it as being important enough to do that. I will just leave it to say that the fair thing for Spring Break 24/7 is that there were moments where, you can look at him and say, oh, okay, well, that was nice. That looked good. Shore probably has the most experience of the three within that group, opposed to Waters and Brittany Bay, that is. And I think that showed because Shore, if I can remember, probably performed the best, but Waters had to sit in there and take the heat, unfortunately. I am still not overly convinced with Crystal Waters as an in-ring worker. I mean, look, I think she tries pretty hard to, get some stuff happening there and do what she needs to do. I just don't know if she needs to be on national TV doing it. I don't feel like she's at that point yet, just even when she does the initial tag. Well, let me set the scene here first. BK Rose is in the ring. She's in with Sandy Shore. Sandy Shore makes the tag to Crystal Waters. She slings her into Crystal Waters' feet, who, she propped those up somewhat like something to be rammed into. Once she's in the ring, before Rhythm's arm is even up, she's already ready to duck a clothesline that isn't coming. It's those moments. It's not that she cannot get there. And I say this about a lot of them. But it's going to take some time for them to get to that point. It's going to take them time to get the rhythm of it, the timing, what works for them and what does not. All of those things largely take some level of experience. And I just don't feel like she has that yet. So the match turns around. Rhythm is on the outside, following a head scissors by Waters. Waters decides that she's going to do something. We don't know what. Assumably a dive or drop kick or something. And then she runs over to the opposite side of the ring towards her opponents. And when she does, she runs into the waiting hand of Reina Del Rey, who grabs her by a handful of hair and then shoves her off towards her tag team partner, BK Rhythm, and she gets caught with a double axe handle. And now the heat is on Waters. And Rhythm is doing the surfing on her and holding her nose like she's about to go swimming and whatnot. They look good, and they always do look good. They being the Alliance. I just wish that there was some level of angle, story, plot, championship, anything. I just wish there was something for them to do that made sense, that gave them focus. They just don't seem to have that, unfortunately. As they're talking about this, McClain takes the time during the match to bring up the fact that Spring Break 24/7 needs to be thankful for being saved by Blaze and Kai. I wrote down they were so thankful that they left him out to dry when they got attacked. Where was Spring Break 24/7 when Blaze and Kai got jumped on top of the ramp? I don't know if I'd even brought it up that, well, they should be thankful that they got saved from getting beaten up a week or so ago by this other team that dominated them while they're getting dominated in the ring right now. Anyhow, I think it's safe for you to assume that when Del Rey got in there that, the business picked up and pretty much beat Waters up relentlessly. And at some point, we get the good old babyface college try. Gianni gets back into the ring. She takes the tag. She gets Waters placed up on the top rope. Assumably, she's looking for a superplex or something, but she tries to punch and then she gets cut off. She gets shoved off following that because high cross body. That doesn't get anything because Waters doesn't even go for the pin. She rolls right off of her. But, I'm not gonna get on that too badly. It doesn't always have to be a pin. I could accept. I would prefer a pin. Don't get me wrong, but I can accept that she did that as a moment of desperation just to get free. So I can get that. Then it turns into Gianni making the tag over to her partner BK Rhythm, and Rhythm gets into the ring and gets met with Waters, who tags off to Bay. Now Bay comes in, and this pretty much makes BK Rhythm have to position herself for a couple of drop kicks and like a splash in the corner. Now, she almost had to walk around Bay's entire body to give her time to do this drop kick. Then the tag comes off the shore, which I know that she's more accomplished in this, but that little heel kick that she tried to do in the corner, that's probably not something that she would want to do going forward. It didn't really get the look that she wanted. It looked like it got caught up in the ropes or something like that, so it didn't have that execution attached to it. So sure, after she does that, she runs across, she makes an attack to both members of the Alliance. Then she does like a drop kick through the ropes, which doesn't connect to BK Rhythm. And I didn't want to really get on that too badly. But then we get to the end, and I don't know what it was that was going on with this. The referee looked like she was suffering from the flu or something. Like she had minimal energy during all of this stuff that was going on. Gianni, she runs across the ring and basically just shoves the other two members of Spring Break 24/7 off of the ring apron. Neither one of them like saw it coming, and they just get put down. The referee's like, "Hey," I mean, she doesn't even look verbal. She just looks like she's sleepwalking. And I mean, my gosh, I don't want to get on that ref, but she really looked like she was kind of sleepwalking that last few minutes of the match. Even when Gianni's moving around, she's kind of minutely moving away from her, just not making a lot of effort to get out of the ring, just like the least amount of effort possible to move away from these people. So after Gianni clears the ring of the other two members of Spring Break 24/7 and they find it impossible to get back up off of the floor, here comes all three members of the Alliance. They hoist Sandy Shore up and they get their finish in. What is that? The Stunad Slam, which looked a lot better than what happened the first time they tried it. This time, it was placed in the corner with both Gianni and Rhythm hoisting up their opponent. Del Rey comes charging in like a bull through a door, flips Shore over, and Gianni and Rhythm help bring her down. And that was it. Stunad Slam, 1, 2, 3. There we go. And then, like she did something, Gambino comes into the ring. Hey, you did it. Love you guys. Mwah. Whatever. I wrote the execution looks much better now. The ref in this match seems lackadaisical. Nothing McClain and Gambino talked about is important. Just talk for the sake of talk. Those were the notes that I put down following that. And I don't know. What was this match supposed to accomplish? What was it supposed to accomplish? Something? It might have just been there for the sake of being there. And that happens. And there's nothing wrong with it. Every so often, you'll get matches that are thrown into the show that are largely there just to, provide a match. And that should be there on occasion. The only reason I question it here is because I don't know what is up with the Alliance. Most of them that are involved in something on WoW can afford just to have a random go nowhere match. I don't know if the Alliance can afford that as a faction. Because they still, how long has it been? They still have not established what their mission statement is, what they're there for, why they got together, and what they hope to accomplish. They have not addressed any of that. The only person that addressed it was David McClain himself, saying something that was completely nonsensical. The Alliance is here, and they're here to take over WoW. And then that was the last you heard about it. Not that you heard anything preceding that. You didn't hear anything about them attempting to take over WoW beforehand. And you haven't heard anything about it since. So it's like the first match on this episode. I don't know. Because, if they go babyface, then this was great. If the Alliance goes on some sort of mega push at this point, then it was great. But outside of that, I just look at this as a match in the vacuum, and it didn't mean anything. It was a nice win. It looked good on TV. And that was about it. The next segment is video package set up for the next match, and that is Chainsaw and Daisy Lane versus Kalaki and Tiki Charmorro. And then we go to the next segment, which is the interview segment, backstage with our backstage interviewer, good old Sibley Scoles. Hey, boy. Okay. I am going to try and say this again and not be insulting to Miss Scoles. I think that she has good presence. She looks good. She speaks well. She clearly is very comfortable doing the interview thing. Probably a great sideline reporter, and so on and so on and so on. I do not, still to this point, I do not see what she personally adds as a wrestling interviewer. I just don't. She doesn't seem to add any sort of extra gravitas to the situation, talking about what this was, how heinous this was, how badly this move might have hurt, how did you apply this. She doesn't add anything to any particular angles, probably because they did all these interviews before an angle was even addressed. So she can't do that. She's not there on the repercussion or the back end of something to see the repercussions of. So she can ask, what are you going to do about it? Or, it's none of the things that a backstage interviewer in a wrestling capacity has been illustrated here yet. She's not showing up after somebody got cheated out of the championship to ask, like, "What? I'm sorry that you got cut out of this. Can you tell me your feelings?" Blah, blah. None of that. Some of this seems like she's somewhat detached. And another case of it becomes hard to take it seriously when you got people in it that don't. So, the backstage interview segment. Scoles, in her studded leather jacket, are standing by, what is this? I don't know, the loading area, where the boxes are, the equipment crates. That's another one of the interview spots that they utilize. And I'm not mad at the interviews. I was just happy that they started using different locations. So I am not going to complain about the different locations that they use to interview. That was one of the things that I did complain about a season ago. Every interview was at the bottom of them goddamn steps. And then they got out of it. So I'm happy for the change. Having said that, Sibley Scoles does not add anything to this. She's standing there with a beautiful big smile on her face while she's talking to these two heeled personas. It doesn't help sell them. Her job is to help sell who the people she's interviewing. Either the person, the angle, well, I can't say the pay-per-view because they don't have the issue or the match. And she doesn't do that. You standing next to these two people who are alleged to be crazy with a big smile on your face like you're talking to your old college buddy does not help. Yeah, Daisy Lane talks fine. And yes, she's dug her heels into being Daisy Lane. And that much I have to give her credit for, even though I don't like the character Daisy Lane. I cannot say, in all honesty, that the persona of Daisy Lane or the person that's playing Daisy Lane is not at least trying to give it all. I just wish that they had given her some other gimmick rather than an Alexa Bliss ripoff or a Harley Quinn ripoff or a combination of the two. So Scoles talks to Lane and Chainsaw, and she stands there with a big smile and gets some words from Daisy, and then she decides to ask Chainsaw a question. And even when you look at her body language, it's like she's going into modeling phase just to put the microphone to her mouth. She puts the microphone up to his, what do you think about that, Chainsaw? And then she gives her normal, rah, rah. And then we get the fourth wall break. Scoles looks right into the camera like, and then just walks off. And it's treated so silly. I don't know what else I can say about it. That one thing right there was treated so silly. It doesn't help Chainsaw. Let's just start with that. That exchange does not make her look, sound, walk, talk, or feel threatening. When you got this woman like, oh, this woman's crazy, you know, and I don't mean like crazy in a threatening way, just like this crazy person, but clearly is harmless, so I'm just going to move away from them because they're annoying. It's more like the crazy person you meet on the train. Yeah. Or at the train station, that guy that's out there talking to the lamppost, and they say something to you, and you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, man, that's right. That is a Big Mac. And then you're just like, oh, move away. It's like that. That's what it's like, that whole scenario. It wasn't crazy like this is terrifying, or I should be afraid of this person, or what she could do to me, or what she could do to somebody else, or what she's done. It's just, oh, wow, all right, she's growled at me, so let me move. Anyhow, no, this does not do anything for me. Especially standing there with that big smile on her face. Beautiful smile, just not appropriate here. The next segment is the actual match. Chainsaw and Daisy Lane versus Tiki, Charmorro, and Kalaki, the Island Girl. You knew that team was going to be formed eventually. There was not a doubt in my mind that those two were going to cross paths and tag up at some point. The fact that they haven't already started calling them the new Island Girls or something is amazing. Because, you know, everybody, the Polynesian connection or something, you knew it. WoW does this quite often now that I'm thinking about it. You'll see somebody come in with a gimmick eerily similar to, or it looks like it could fit like a hand in a glove to somebody else that's already on the roster. You feel like, it's probably going to tag up or fight against each other at some point. We said that about Animal Instinct. Yeah, there's a dog trainer and there's somebody who believes she's a cat. Pretty sure they're either going to wrestle against each other or tag up. Rebel Hayes and Fury. Here comes somebody else inside of this wild universe who feels like heavy metal is the essence of life. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be a time that they tag up. Sure enough. And here we go. Same thing. Kalaki the Island Girl. She's Polynesian. Tiki, she's Polynesian. They got to tag up. Anyhow, this match begins with the commentators talking about, we haven't heard about how Angelica Dante feels about this. Now, they are talking about the whole change of Daisy Lane and Chainsaw as they have formed this bond, and apparently Angelica Dante has gotten edged out of that. And let's address that just for a second, because I didn't really get that as a talking point. What is Angelica Dante supposed to do if she does come back? She was treated initially as the villain of the story. Somehow she was holding Chainsaw back or punishing her or torturing her or mentally abusing her, whatever. We never saw it, so we don't know what this was that was happening to Chainsaw. Yet another bone of contention, but we'll move on. So Dante was positioned as the bad guy in that, and Pep Riley at the time was coming there to save her from this horrible existence. Now we can fast forward that story, and we saw that she actually did, but then it just turned into Pep Riley turning into this. She turned into Daisy Lane. So I say all of that to say, what is it that Angelica Dante is supposed to do if she does come back? Is she supposed to come back as a baby face? Well, if she does, how do you justify it? I was only doing those things because she's really evil, and I have to make sure that she doesn't cause these problems. Is Angelica Dante's role in this the case of the necessary evil? I only abused her and kept her in line because, she had to be because of this other thing. Which in the scope of WoW would not make a lot of sense. And I doubt that even if they were trying to be that complicated, that it wouldn't come off well. So I doubt that she can come back as a babyface. But then how does she come back as a heel? Because Chainsaw, all right, so she was taken away from one heel and basically swapped out one for the other. She didn't go babyface at any point within this. They went out of their way, seemingly, to give some level of sympathy attached to Chainsaw as to why she needed to be saved and this upbringing that she had and whatnot. And then they sapped every bit of sympathy away from that. They yanked the rug, titled sympathy right out from underneath the feet of everybody when they started changing Pep Riley to Daisy Lane. There is no reasonable outcome that can be applied to this, particularly concerning Angelica Dante. So I don't know what they were bringing it up for in the first place. Like that, there is no good direction. There's no good direction that you could go with based on what they've done already. And the story is already skewed and stupid, and it is a complete and utter failure. And the only reason that they don't get any more flack than what I'm giving them is because they don't get addressed by the wrestling public. They don't get addressed by the wrestling media. They don't get addressed by most other media outlets as far as their angles and storylines are concerned. If they did, they would probably get roasted relentlessly. Which is also the reason I said there is no way possible that Jeannie Buss watches this show week to week. I absolutely refuse to believe that. I think she tunes into it every once in a while, just enough for her to be like, hey, look at what I own. Wow, they look great. And then just turn it off and go about the paying attention to what really earns her money, the Lakers. So, but anyway, why should we care? That was the whole point of that little tirade. Why should we care about whether or not Angelica Dante likes this union, dislikes this union, is concerned about it, wants Chainsaw back or not? Why should we care about that? There's no reason for anyone to care when WoW's own storytelling told you that Dante was somebody that Chainsaw needed to be taken away from because she mysteriously has been abused here. Now, what level of abuse, we don't know. So anyhow, there's no possible way that any of that can make sense. Moving forward, the heels get in the ring, the babyfaces get in the ring. I really, really wanted Kalaki, Tracy Taylor, to have a more prominent role on this show. I really did. I felt like it would have been an easy slot for her, especially if they had, serviced it up a little bit, maybe looked at some of her footage outside of WoW to try to portray her as a long-term veteran of the business, and this is my, after a long career, my reward of being on a national stage finally, and, before I end my career, I would like to be the champion of WoW, blah, blah, blah. I would have liked that, but I was really holding my breath there, and that's not going to happen. I mean, first off, we know it's not going to happen because she's not Tracy Taylor on the show. She's Kalaki, the Island Girl. Secondly, she's coming there, and what has it been, 2 or 3 months? Haven't heard her say a word. Not why she's there, what she's wanting to accomplish in a while, who she is, anything. Not hey, I'm happy to be teaming up with these other two people. She's just there. So whatever hopes that I had for her individually, pretty much squashed. Tiki. I said a couple of times Tiki has, won me over in some cases. Except for when she has these moments when she plays the comedy card with her facial expressions, and it's as much as I have grown to like her, she does have these moments where she'll just become a cartoon character, chainsaw or something stands behind her, and she has that gloop look on her face. And for whatever reason in this match, is like, what was the idea of the people biting Tiki? And I'm not even sure how it hurt. I say that because when the match began, it's Tiki and Lane. And Tiki pretty much, let's say, out-wrestled her in this instance. Didn't care for the pounce because it did not look impactful. If you can't deliver that move, then don't deliver the move. Because that's one of my favorites at the pounce. Originated by the Monty Brown, the alpha male, Monty Brown, the originator of the pounce. And they did everything they could to get that move over, and they did. Those guys flew when they took the pounce. Here, it just, what it caused her to inconveniently stumble over herself, Daisy Lane. So, I would really, really rather her stay away from that just for the sake of authenticity, so to speak. But getting back to the point where I was talking about with the bite, right? So, Kalaki comes in, and now she's the one that's beating up on Daisy Lane. Meanwhile, Chainsaw goes sneakily around the side because, as big as she is, no one would notice that she's walking around there unseen. Now, but seriously, in fairness to that, I mean, Tiki did look like she was engaged in the match. I'm just teasing Chainsaw. But what I didn't get was she bit her on her knee pad and around her knee brace. Like, how's this getting to her flesh? That shouldn't hurt. I mean, inconvenience, yeah, but it shouldn't be hurting her. So she takes a bite out of Tiki. Then she comes into the ring. And the referee, I don't know what the layout of this could have been to be better. Because it didn't really work in this instance. Chainsaw comes in, the referee just says like, hey, you have to get out of there. Then Tiki comes in and he goes over there and stops her. Rather than telling her to get back and then addressing Chainsaw. So Chainsaw comes in, turns the tide, and drags Kalaki over to the corner. Lane makes the tag, and now we got Chainsaw and Kalaki. And, of course, that's where the tides, they start to turn. Chainsaw beats up on Kalaki for a little while until she's able to break herself free with a little quick maneuvering. And then she gets in with Tiki, Wild's resident underdog, or at least she should have been. So Tiki comes in. She tries to tee off on Chainsaw. Remember those comedic faces that I said that she does? Well, that's pretty much the start of it right there. So Tiki's in there. She gets overpowered by Chainsaw. Then we get Lane back in there, so it's a little bit more of an even fight. Daisy Lane is nominally in control here until Tiki's able to get herself free. Now, we had a second bite on the knee, and again, I don't know why or how that was supposed to hurt Tiki because she looks to have a fairly thick knee pad on. And she's got a knee brace on top of her. So at where on her body, by her knee, was Daisy Lane's teeth getting through so much to the point that Tiki can't even stand up. I mean, it wasn't just the teeth. I mean, she did drape her knee over the ropes and stuff like that. But the sell was the bite. And I just don't know, like, how is this incapacitating you to the point that she's like, I got a lip? Anyhow, we get Kalaki and Chainsaw in the ring. Lane is on the outside, more or less distracting Tiki. Now, of course, this is after Kalaki got the tag in, and she shows some fire in there, fires off a couple of flying headbutts against Chainsaw and everything. And then we get to the end, and this is the part where I was like, it'd have probably been a better finish if they had established this finishing move of Kalaki's. A couple of weeks ago when she used it during the middle of a match, I can't remember which match it was, it's like a snapmare driver that she did. And I felt, man, that thing looks good. It should be a finish. Because it wasn't a finish there. It got broken up immediately. Here, she's going for it. And Chainsaw stops it. But I felt like it could have worked better for a reaction if Kalaki had actually established that this was a finish. So people would think that, hey, she might get close to finishing Chainsaw off. She might actually get her down and get a pin on her. But instead, she goes for this move, which, again, when I saw it the time that I did see it, it looked great. And it should have been a finish that she had, but, I mean, what difference did it make? Because Kalaki doesn't win. And this match wasn't any different. Chainsaw fights out of whatever it is that Kalaki was attempting to do. I just called it a snapmare driver because that's the closest thing that I could really apply to it as a name. She tries it, unable to get over. Chainsaw grabs the hair, he yanks Kalaki down, hits her with a splash, 1, 2, 3, and it's done. They finish it up. And now Chainsaw is doing the thing that Pep Riley stopped her from doing before. In fact, she's doing the thing now that she had to be encouraged to do like a month ago. And now she's just doing it just because it's fun. The consistency in storytelling here is astounding. So after that, Lane comes in. They do their little whirly bird splash. I don't know what they call that thing. I forget. And Lane lands on Kalaki, and she insists that the referee counts again. Now, I am fine with that, actually. I do like the heels like, hey, count. That's an old school thing. I'm actually pretty good with that. I just don't like the storytelling. So they attack after the match. And McClain calls it like usual, and it doesn't mean anything. Then Lane gets on the microphone and cuts a promo about nothing. It's done with conviction, and I will say she has more emotion attached to what she's doing than some other ones there. But there's no direction that I could see other than, hey, we found our power. Well, yay for them, It just felt like a promo for the sake of a promo, and it is what it is. It's not going to set the world on fire. It's not going to talk people into watching the show. It's not going to change the path of Daisy Lane, and all she's done so far is invite the Alexa Bliss comparisons. So, again, nice, done with conviction, no direction, and no content. So, we get out of this, and we go to the next segment, the top tier Terror Strike injury package, which sets up how Kalaki and Ashley Blaze started teaming up. And then they talk about Xena Phoenix having joined the team. Now, this is after they showed top tier doing this heinous act of damaging the knee of Terror Strike. Now, I have to say the editors did a fine job here of trimming it down to where it's not painfully obvious that the injury angle was worthless. They got it down to where that's not the case. And other than a few things that are in there, I was fine with the package. Like, I could have dealt without the obligatory David McClain spot that they threw in there. Like, it served no I'm sorry to Dave McClain, because it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't. It does not serve any purpose to have him in that package saying, "You're going to pay for this, I guarantee it." Because when he does that, it takes it off of the people that's involved and puts it on him, which he never does anything. We talked about this one in the previous episode. What do those fine means when everybody ignores it or doesn't take it seriously, laughs it off, shows back up like nothing happened at all? Fines didn't mean anything. The story is supposed to be the baby faces and the heels. Dave McClain is not supposed to have anything to do with that. So him getting up on the microphone, yelling into it about how top tier is going to pay, and he had a month and a half to do something about it and he didn't, don't put it in the video. It's pointless. It doesn't mean anything. He didn't do anything then, so we don't need him to do it now. Let's put it on the baby faces, not on him. And then during the video, they talk about how Xena Phoenix has joined them. They talk about this in past tense, and I'm like, well, at what point did we ever see them address, talk to, ask, recruit Xena Phoenix for this fight that they're doing? When did that happen? But then we see her afterwards in the locker room, like, they're already a big unit, and they've already taken the photos in the studio together. I mean, if there's anything that tells you that all of this stuff is really orchestrated, is that no matter how random the team is at this point, somehow they always manage to get themselves down to that studio. Hey, record us posing together for the next 5 minutes so they can splice this into the show. So now we have them. We got this new team with Kalaki, Ashley Blaze, and Xena Phoenix. And then we start off with them cutting a promo in the locker room. Phoenix is still bland, still doing the same thing. Well, we're gonna get them get even. Are you okay? As she points at Ashley Blaze's knee that starts acting up out of nowhere for no apparent reason, just because she's angry in the locker room. So we knew right then and right there, I was like, okay. They made it a point to include that her knee's bothering her in this segment. I knew right then, I was like, I don't know how it's going to play into the next thing, but it's going to come up somehow. Oh, boy. So anyhow, I'm not sure why this is in there, along with the little things that they peppered into it. The injury angle is crap. Dave McClain being included in this thing is unnecessary. And as much as I called angle alert when they walked up the ramp backwards for 10 or 15 seconds, I am calling angle alert here. Is your knee okay? Oh, it's fine. I was like, okay, well, we know something's coming with that. Next segment is a HollySwag video package and why she turned and she cuts a promo on her mother in the hallway. I probably personally would have preferred if it was just her talking to the audience. However, that they made it into a video package rather than a straight out interview or promo, I'm fine with that. Swag is a good talker. And she delivered what a HollySwag needed to deliver to justify in her mind why she had to do what she did. You wouldn't let me do this. Y'all had all these rules, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'm supposed to be living this life. You held me, the typical here's you held me back. I could have been living this life already, and you stopped me. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's essentially what we were getting out of that. I could have been living champagne, caviar, this, that, and the other, and you stopped me from doing it. Now, if you heard me talk about the mother truckers back in the day, you already know I think that is a ridiculous storyline. It's like they have no concept of money whatsoever, and they're the only people on that roster who seemingly do not have any concept of money. It's just, where are we going to get this cash from? Or we got no responsibility to pay this $5,000 back or whatever. Eat somewhere other than a truck stop? Why, that's blasphemy. Anyhow, so she did this promo. The promo's fine. I thought it did well. Like I said, my personal preference would have been that she cut an impassioned promo to the people in front of that camera without the video package. That would have been my preference. But as it was, the promo is good. Next segment, Jessie Jones talking to Big Rig Betty. And again, we got a different environment. Here we are on the outside. Now, the wild hallway that Swag was walking down doing the talking seems to be the hallway that is addressed for the heels, if not just the Fab Four. Well, no, I can't say the Fab Four in general because I did see Smart and Classmates do it. So we'll just say the heels. They're the ones that seem to utilize that more often than anybody else. But the baby faces here were speaking on the outside. They were talking, looked like one of the stairways, the rolling stairs that you can use like in a warehouse. That's what it looked like she was sitting on. She being Big Rig Betty. So Betty's sitting there and she's talking with Jessie Jones, and Jones is telling her that what she needs to do to beat Swag. And again, we're going to paraphrase, saying something to the effect that you allowed her to get spoiled, and you didn't spank her then, so you're going to have to spank her now. And you're going to have to spank her inside of the ring. That's basically what it came down to. Jessie Jones is very, very good at being who she needs to be. She doesn't speak in a bland tone. She doesn't, I'm just doing this for justice and I hope I learn. She's not, no, she's a competitor and she plays to win. It's just, who is she directing her angst towards? As a babyface, she does lighten up on the amount of times that she will bend and break rules, but she's still willing to bend and break rules provided that the person did it first, more or less. When she's a heel, then she's more aggressive, but we can't look at her and say that like she just changed wholeheartedly and top to bottom. Jessie Jones has been Jessie Jones from the moment she got there. Whether she's been babyface or heel, didn't matter. But that was the pep talk. And then we get a preview for next week, which is supposed to be Blaze, Kai, and Phoenix taking on Top Tier. Now we get to the main event, and it's HollySwag versus Big Rig Betty. HollySwag comes out with Lana Star, Penelope Pink. Big Rig Betty comes out with Jessie Jones. First thing I wrote here is I like Penelope Pink, but why is she there? Particularly when she clearly doesn't like Swag. Like, for what reason does she need to be out there? And then she didn't do anything for her. She just basically walked right by the ring straight into the commentating booth. So I don't know what it was that required her to be at ringside or there at all. She was entertaining when she was on the microphone and talking about it. Yeah, I mean, that much I can absolutely say. She was very entertaining. But I just didn't get the point of her being there. Especially when we have made it an absolute point that she didn't care about HollySwag. She didn't like HollySwag. At least up until this point currently. She might turn around tomorrow and be her best friend. But as of right now, everything points to her not liking her. And only doing it because Lana wants her to. Aside from that, there seems to be no real reason for her to be around there, hanging with him or anything of that nature whatsoever. Like, even when she comes into the ring and Lana and Penelope do their stance, palm to palm posing, HollySwag wants to get her palming in, then Penelope just kind of like, nope, and dust her face off with her feather boa. And then we get to the other half of it. And I only laugh because this, I wrote down, I was like, what was this glamour shot that they put on Big Rig Betty? I don't know why the editors there now feel like everybody that comes out has to be interspliced with some footage that we took of them either 5 or 6 years ago, or we got to splice in the footage of them just in the studio setting all together. And the clip that they used for Betty, I was like, well, that one certainly sells me on the idea of how angry she is while she's staring off glowingly into the limelight. Like, what was that? Of all the clips of footage to use, why that? And did it take anything from the match? No, but that particular thing just bothers me as an editor. I like that just goes in a different direction from what we're trying to convey here. I mean, it all matters. I'm sorry, it all matters. And especially when you have other options of footage to use. But getting back to the match, and before we even start with the match, it should be pointed out, as I have before, this match has taken place a couple of different places already. OVW being the most prominent, but it has happened across a couple of other independent promotions. Mostly, I think, in the not Midwest, we'll just say the southern region. And nothing against this match. In fact, I would say that the match in and of itself was pretty good, entertaining. I have a drawback to it largely based on that I saw the other version of it first. And the OVW version, having seen them both now, I will say is the more engaging. Like that, there felt like there was more into it rather than what we got here. Because it didn't hit me until the match was over with. I was like, where are the stakes? The match was fine, but where were the stakes of the match? When I looked at the OVW match, first off, they started off with a video package. I'm going to sidebar onto that just for a second. They started off with a video package showing how unruly Hollywood Haley J had been. Knocking people out with the sock of rocks, or rocks in the sock, whatever. To the point that the owner, who isn't on there all the time, comes out, Al Snow, and he makes a statement to the audience. essentially saying Haley J has been out of control. We've tried to take care of this. She's been a pain, and this time she's gone too far, so I have no choice but to press charges against her. And then here comes Amazing Maria. Please don't do that. This is my baby girl. She's just a little turned around right now. I'll do what I have to. Just let me handle it, and I'll take care of it. She's begging him. Allison like, well, you better do something about it, otherwise I am. Then I think, if I remember correctly, that's when the Hollywood comes out. She gives both of them lip. Then she smacks Al Snow, and he looks like he's about to smack her back. And Maria stops her. And he's like, hey, look, all right, you want your match, you got it. But you better be willing to do what it takes to get her under control. So they set the stage, and then you go to the match, and I'm not going to go through that entire thing, other than to say they tried to tell a story in the ring. That story being that Maria did not want to attack her daughter. She didn't want to fight her. But her daughter forced her into doing it. Even when the match started, there was weapons in there, and she was moving them out of the way. She was getting them out. She was putting them out of the ring. Haley's yelling at her, why won't you fight me? She's like, I love you, damn it. You know, that type of thing. There was something there. This match isn't that they don't have anything there. Both of these ladies are good at what they do. Both of them. And it's not as if they're walking into this thing blind. They had the benefit that most other Wild girls do not have. And I say most. And that this match has already occurred. And they're not walking in this with no idea of how to work it. Starts off with HollySwag trying to escape. And her mother stops her. Then she tries to escape again. This time Jessie Jones stops her. It starts off with Swag as playing the coward. She talked a big game, but then when she got into the ring and she saw her mom, even the small nuance of her cowering behind the ref. You see Big Rig Betty get into the ring while her lighting treatment is on and everything like that. You see Swag cowering down in the corner, holding the referee in front of her. So there's little things there. And Swag gets beat up on for a little while. Penelope Pink is over there doing some great commentary. But again, I question why she's out there in the first place. But we move forward with this. Swag is trying to get help from Star. Star, is trying, but she's run off by Betty. At the same time, and Jones was coming around the corner giving her the eye. Penelope Pink allegedly is refusing to get up and help. Even though the cameras, that's one of those points where the cameras didn't reflect it. The cameras didn't show that Lana's like, hey, come over here and help me. Which would have been a little better. But Swag at some point bows up to Ma, gives her a double chop in the throat to turn it around, and I was about to say Maria, and that wasn't the case there, but Big Rig Betty starts getting mad and bowing up at her. Now here's the point where I'm a little bit confused. Well, confused isn't the word. I'm a little bit in conflict about what I feel about this, because I like it and I don't. It being Jessie Jones's involvement. I don't like it because she is still a babyface, and she was perfectly willing to come in and clobber HollySwag in the head with that log or the big branch that she carries around. Her big stick. I didn't like it for those reasons. Because HollySwag didn't initiate the cheating. She was aggressive, and she hit her mother, which is enough. And it's enough for a friend to be like, hey, look, we're not going to have that. But she's the babyface, so I didn't like it on those terms. I liked it on the other side of that because it goes back to what we said about Jessie Jones before. Jessie Jones does the things that Jessie Jones would do. She's established that she's this type of personality. She's established that within this universe, she didn't take anybody's crap. And she's established that even though they established it late, they have established that Big Rig Betty and Jesse Jones are friends, and they go back a ways. So the concept that watching my friend getting smacked around, chopped in the face, spit on by her mother, not her mother, by her daughter, and wanting to do something about it is not some sort of foreign concept. It makes sense. But as stated earlier, it does leave me in a little bit of conflict as to, whether or not it works overall. Could this match have worked without Jesse Jones' involvement? Probably. But it was a good moment in the match. I don't know if it really translated as well to the public. The moment being not just that Jones came in to hit Swag, is that Big Rig Betty saved her daughter from being hit. She moved her out of the way. And I don't know if that really caught or was illustrated as much as it should have been. But just go back and look at it. Swag is smacking around, yelling at her. She's giving the lip. Big Rig is giving her a mean look like she wants to do something, but I got to restrain myself. I can't. It's my child. It's almost like that. But then you see the moment where she sees behind her and she grabs her head and she throws her out of the way. And then she catches the stick from coming down. And that was, in terms of timing, that was pretty good. She got out of the way, she caught the stick, and it did look like Jesse Jones was in full swing and wouldn't have been able to stop herself, to prevent hitting her friend anyway. But she gives her a little, hey, look, get out of here. They have words with each other for a moment. Swag takes advantage of that, attacks him on from behind. Jones tries to attack her again with the stick. Referee stops her this time and takes the stick away and gives it to somebody off screen. I don't know. Maybe just drops it on the ground. I'm not sure how that will stop Jones from getting another weapon or using the belt or interfering, but it stops her from using the stick, at least temporarily. So Swag is all over her mother, beating her up until not Jones. See, I'm getting the wrong people to talk about here. Until Betty is able to get a suplex and a nicely executed one at that to bring the match back in her favor. Swag still has some fight left in her, of course. She ain't going down without one. Lana Star gets up. This time I'm glad that she didn't go walking across to the opposite side of the ring before she did something. She actually got up, side that she was on, and to try to provide some level of distraction. She gets Betty to come over to her, and it was almost the inadvertent, oops, I hit my manager spot. Almost. But Betty sees it coming when HollySwag tries to charge her from behind. Lana gets down. Swag is able to stop herself, and for a moment she's like, oh, hey, I'm sorry. But she has that split second of apologizing to Lana. But that was all it needed, because there comes Betty. She turns her around, give her a kick in the gut, and then honk, honk, and she hits her with the stunner. And that would be the finish. Hooks the leg, 1, 2, 3. She gets the win. She beats her daughter. Nice moment. But that was when it hit me. I was like, well, what were the stakes here? What were the stakes that were taking place in this match? It was good to see Big Rig Betty get some level of revenge over being, mistreated by a child. But at the same time, did we see enough of HollySwag being a snot to her mom in succession, so to speak, to make people really care about the fact that Big Rig Betty got this win? I've often used the term like there are matches that should mean more than the match or means more than the championship. And this should have been one of those moments. It should have meant more than Big Rig Betty winning. Now, I know there's other examples of siblings and father and child or best friends or whatnot that played like that, but the good ones, there was always something there or something that pushed them to this point that they're like, I have to do this, not because I want to, it's because you're making me do it. That first half of it, I feel like Swag and Big Rig Betty, they had. And somewhat. Jesse Jones being added to that, giving the speech to Big Rig is what helps that out. Like, well, you didn't spank it in, so you need to be doing it now. But the big ones, the ones that I said were executed fine, Bret Hart and Owen Hart. That was a wrestling match. But that's what the match was about. And they established that. It was the whole case of Owen feeling like no one takes me seriously. I'm just as good as Bret, if not better. And he puts out the challenge. I can beat you. Give me the match and I can beat you. And, of course, he's resistant. He being Bret, he's resistant until he finally, they finally had that moment to finally blow up. And then he's like, all right, look, this is what you want. Then that's what I'm going to give you the fight. Of course, he was more angry than that, but you get the point. So in that instance, the stakes were Owen needed to win. He needed to be able to prove that he could out-wrestle his brother. That was what that match was about, and he did. It didn't turn into a vicious bloodbath. It was anger there, but it wasn't, built off of, I have to kill you. The other one, and one of the better ones in terms of the story, not necessarily match, was Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Two people that the world knew were best friends, and now Scott's turned on his friend. And to fast forward, it basically came down to Kevin Nash saying, if I can't talk some sense into him, then maybe I'll just have to beat it into him. And that wasn't even the end point, the explanation that I felt the match, that separated that match from everything else. To where I felt like it was more important than the match. At the end of that, Kevin Nash beat Scott Hall to the point that Scott Hall cannot stand up anymore. Because he got to a point in that match where he just like, enough of this. And then he just beats up on Scott Hall to the point that he cannot stand. And then he just walks off. He says some words to him, then he leaves. And the commentator was good because it illustrates like this was never about the match for Kevin. This was never about the match, and it wasn't about the money. It was about his friend. And his friend had got to the point that the words no longer mattered. This is the only thing that I can make him understand. And maybe if I do it bad enough, he'll snap out of this. Repeat the point. Sometimes it has to be bigger than the match. I felt like this should have been one of those times where it was like, this should have been bigger than the match. Yeah, it was nice Big Rig Betty won. But I don't know, did she gain anything from this win? Did something come from this? Other than she beat her daughter in a wrestling match. And I'm not saying that they needed to apply some stakes. Like, if I win, you have to lead the thing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying a little bit more setup going into this match. Even if they took the ending of the Kevin Nash Scott Hall match, because I can't imagine that the mom would really care. And look, you're still my child. She illustrated that in the match when she saved her from getting clobbered in the back of the head with that stick. Like, you're still my child and I still love you. And I'm only doing this because you have turned into just an ass. She beats her up, hits her with the stunner or whatever she calls hers. Maybe picks up, pops with her again, maybe one more time, and then she leaves. And she can make it clear, get on the microphone. This is not because I, dislike you or whatever. On the contrary, I love you. But I love you enough that I'm going to leave, and hopefully this will teach you a lesson or whatever. I don't know. I can only say the match for what it was fine for Wow's TV. I do not think that it exceeds what they did in OVW. I think the OVW version had much more emotional flair attached to it. And that's the only thing that I think that Wow could have, if they put effort into it, gotten over on them with. Gotten over OVW with. If they had gotten more emotion attached into this match, because they weren't going to beat them on violence. That wasn't going to happen. Wow is just not in the... They're not in the purview of that. They're not in the orbit of anything hardcore like that. That just was not going to happen. But in this case, that was probably the only real piece of leverage that they could have had to separate their version of it from the other one as being better. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So, what can we do? It was fine. It was promoted big, but there were no stakes applied by either Wow or the participants themselves. And my note was some matches need more than just a pin. And I stand by that. And that was the entirety of the review for that episode. What you gonna do, Mama? It's been a ongoing trend with me and Wild to say that the matches, by and large, have been fine. But then there are these cases where the angles, the stories, the personas that surround the matches will just suck the life out of the episode. And it'll leave me asking more questions than it will give me answers. The Daisy Lane deal and Chainsaw interview. The backstage with Kai, Blaze, and Phoenix. The top tier, or not top tier, well, I guess they are wrapped up in that. Miami Sweet Heat and the Lana Star issue. Big Rig Betty and her daughter probably is the most complete thing that they had. Every other thing that was there has some level of easily poked hole that you can apply to ask, now wait a minute, why did they do this? Or why did that happen? What did this mean? Why is Lana Star not coming out with Miami Sweet Heat? What is the big problem? Why is Chainsaw not scared of this backstage interviewer? Why does Angelica Dante care about this? Why did Chainsaw just leave one and go to the other? I mean, there's all these other questions that you can apply. And to the credit of Big Rig, HollySwag, Penelope Pink, Lana Star, Jesse Jones, all parties involved in that, I didn't like necessarily how they got to this point. And yes, I would have preferred they have some stakes attached to the match in and of itself. But it's a far more airtight deal than anything else that took place on Wild, short of the Alliance Spring Break 24/7 match. And that's only because there's really no story there. And even then, I had an issue with Gambino leaving and going to the commentating booth all the time. So you get what I'm saying. There's a lot of little things that kind of work against me in terms of Wow and their layout. It was an average show. That's about what I would give this. And it's really difficult sometimes to gauge them show by show because they don't have any tentpole events that they work towards. They don't have a Wow Unleashed like their pay-per-view from 20 years ago. They don't have their version of a WrestleMania or All In. They don't have a TV special. If they did, it probably would make getting from one chapter of the story, for lack of a better term, to the next a little easier. But as it is, they try to tell these long, ongoing stories, a lot of which somebody back there is not good at. And I thought the Ariel Sky thing with Top Tier was bad. Pep Riley, Daisy Lane chainsaw angle is just as bad, if not worse. But I will try to save that for when I go off into the next one, because I don't want to sidebar too much. So having said that, we have gone through this and we got another review on the horizon. We saw the preview. Top Tier facing off against, I guess, their new rivals, Phoenix, Blaze, and Kai. That'll be coming up in the next review. Who did what? How did they do it? Who won? Who lost? Or more importantly, did it make any sense? We'll talk about all of those things on the next one. And in closing, we start with, make sure you do the YouTube things. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. If you are catching this on your podcast platforms, wherever they may be, a rating may help. If for some reason you're hearing this elsewhere and you don't know where to find any of these things, go to WPNWrestling.com. It is the focal point of everything that goes on. Videos and podcasts. There's a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week stream that is there that features a lot of the productions that were created from 2013 on to present day, and a few other Easter eggs and extra videos and whatnot. And on that note, I think that I got it all. Did I cover it all? I believe so. So it's time for that close. This is Mr. Green saying that this is Mr. Green saying so long, and we will see you on the next go round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.